Good morning, PTNI's daily show. Happy Friday morning. Hope your day is off to a great start. Welcome to Snowpocalypse 2022 Christmas edition. I hope you don't have to go to the clinic today or drive in this. If you're basically anywhere that's not Florida or the West Coast, you're probably dealing with some of this. So I hope your day's off to a great start. My name is Alan. I'm happy to be your host today. Currently have the pleasure of serving as the Chief Operating Officer here at ICE and a lead faculty in our fitness athlete division. It is the best day of the week. It is Fitness Athlete Friday. Today, we're going to talk about coaching group fitness, pros and cons and benefits. Before we get started, I just want to talk about a couple of announcements. Courses coming your way from the Fitness Athlete Division. If you're looking to learn from us online, our next cohort of clinical management of the fitness athlete essential foundations will start March 6th. That's our 8-week introductory course to all things fitness athlete. If you're looking to work with the CrossFitter, the power lifter, the Olympic lifter, the orange theorist, the boot camp athlete, the recreational global gym goer, whoever you want to work with, those active individuals in your community, that is the course for you. And we also have our Clinical Management Fitness Athlete Advanced Concepts course. That is our level 2 online course. That will start February 27th. Prerequisite for that course is Essential Foundations. So if you've already taken Essential Foundations, you can jump into that course with Zach, Mitch, and Joe. That course is only taught twice a year. Really deep dive into programming, Olympic weightlifting, advanced CrossFit movements, and more advanced kind of special population programming, as well as business planning for those of you who want to create a side hustle or maybe go all in on working with a gym or multiple gyms in your area. And then live courses coming your way, Clinical Management Fitness Athlete Live. Your chance to start learning from us begins in January. You can join Zach Long down in Decatur, Georgia. That will be the weekend of January 14th and 15th, or the weekend of February 4th and 5th. Joe will be down in Doral, Florida. That's a suburb just right outside of Miami. So what a great time. Speaking of terrible winter weather, what a great chance to get to Florida, check 2 boxes at once, get out of terrible weather, and get some learning on with Joe down in Florida. So check us out, ptnis.com, click on our courses. You'll see everything live and online coming your way in the new year. So Fitness Athlete Friday, what are we talking about today? We're talking about why you should coach group fitness. And now a little bit about me. If you don't know anything about me, I am a CrossFit Level 3 coach. So my bias is going to be coaching CrossFit. However, I think coaching group fitness, coaching small groups has a benefit no matter what that element is. If you are maybe a running coach, a track and field or cross country coach, if you are an Orange Theory coach or a boot camp coach, when you're working with a group of maybe 5 to 10 individuals working out at once, that's essentially what we're talking about. It doesn't have to specifically be CrossFit. So I want to talk today about development of your coach's eye when you are coaching group fitness and how that relates to physical therapy practice. I want to talk about the development of a coach-first mentality that you learn when you are coaching group fitness, the concept of scaling when you're coaching group fitness, and the concept of connecting with other individuals in the community who are on the same mission as us of promoting health and well-being and lifestyle change and active intervention versus passive things like pills and surgery and injections and that sort of thing. So I want to start with my first point of the development of your coach's eye. So something that is a slap in the face to many is just the recognition that as a profession, that when we zoom out and we say physical therapy is a profession, not me as a physical therapist or you as a physical therapist or your friend or your coworker, but as an entire profession, we are not movement experts. We've had a bazillion APTA panels on movement assessment and have tried to create if you're watching on video, air quotes, the movement assessment for how a human being should move. And we spend a lot of money putting people up in hotels and having meetings in boardrooms, and we have gotten absolutely nowhere as a profession on agreeing on a unifying way to assess movement, mainly because most of us, not most of us, you and I, you are inherently biased by being here as well and listening to me, but most of us as a profession do not watch humans move on a regular basis. So because we don't do that, because we don't maybe even have patients exercise in the clinic, we are not really getting an understanding of how humans move, what faults might show up with different movement patterns, that there are indeed common natural movement patterns to human movement, and there are what we would call points of performance with those movement patterns. And we often get this question a lot in our online courses of who who is the authority on these points of performance? And our answer is quite simple. It's not any specific organization. All of us that teach here in the Fitness Athlete at ICE have a lot of personal movement background. We have a lot of background in taking different courses, not only physical therapy, but CrossFit courses, powerlifting courses, Olympic weightlifting courses, and just seeing how different coaches and different schools of thought show up in showing points of performance for movements like a squat or a deadlift or a press. And what we've kind of realized is there is no leading authority, because humans tend to move the same way. And the leading authority at the end of the day for how humans move is physics, right? The most efficient way to move is how somebody will move. And those tend to show up as points of performance that we can standardize. We can say the squat should start like this. It might not always go how we want it once somebody begins moving, but at least it should start like this. For most people, it's going to go well if they start like this, if they start their deadlifts like this, if they start their press like this. So that's where our points of performance come from. And coaching group fitness is a great way to get literally in sometimes even a day, thousands of repetitions of watching different people who have a wide variety of movement background and experience, injuries, adaptations, fused ankles, fused backs, missing arms, adaptive athletes, whatever, watching all that spectrum and continuum of movement go down in the gym, and literally watch hundreds of people perform thousands of repetitions in the course of one day of coaching class. And with coaching group fitness comes the development and the refinement of that coach's eye, of literally watching people move over and over and over again. And if you believe in the 10,000 hour rule, watching all these people move really gives you an idea of how most movement patterns tend to look similar, how most people tend to show a pattern of faults, 5 to 10 faults that show up in a movement like a squat. We don't see an infinite number of faults show up. We don't show an infinite number of ways that people set up in their squat. We tend to see kind of the same compensations based on what might be happening at a joint or what might be happening with a particular injury pattern. And we can learn to kind of almost create an algorithm in our brain of, okay, I see what's happening. I know now how to coach and correct that. So developing the coach's eye comes from coaching movement, from introducing movement to people, whether they have zero experience ever exercising or they've been exercising a long time, watching them move for repetitions, learning to coach, cue, correct, and then watching what happens. And the more I coach and the longer I've been coaching, the more I reflect on how much of a benefit that is really kind of flying under the radar of, if I am watching a workout where we have a workout like Karen, 150 wall balls for time, and I coach 4 or 5 classes in the morning, I'm probably going to watch 100 people do 150 wall balls. I'm going to watch 1,500 squats and 1,500 overhead presses in the span of a few hours. And what I've reflected on a lot over the past couple of years is that if I was spending that same amount of time working with patients one-on-one, I would not nearly get that level of coach's eye experience with one-on-one patients. Maybe if I had 6 hours of patients and I saw them one-on-one for an hour, maybe half of them had squats that would be appropriate for their plan of care. So I might watch 50 to 150 squats in that same amount of time versus 1,500 repetitions of a squat, talking about a 1,000% increase in how much movement I'm watching. And just understanding that getting in front of a group of people, watching how they move, helps me so much better as a physical therapist, because I'm not as scared to introduce that movement to somebody. I know what I'm looking for, points of performance. I know what I'm looking for, like, ooh, that's kind of faulty movement. Here is my go-to cue. Here is my go-to corrective to try to make that look a little bit better, with the end result being I want to load that a little bit heavier. I want to have a more robust human being walk out of my clinic. So just understanding development of the coach's eye comes from repetitions that you just can't get in physical therapy practice. Even if you unfortunately work in a high volume clinic where you might be seeing multiple patients an hour, you're still not going to clear what the average coach will see in an hour working with small group fitness. So my first point there is the amazing development of the coach's eye that happens when you begin to coach group fitness. And the second is the development of a coach-first mentality. That as physical therapists in school, we develop these 8-page double-sided evaluations of all these different things we're going to check. We're going to test this, special test, manual therapy, stretch this, all of this hands-on stuff, with the realization that all of that stuff takes time And that, to my first point, if we are getting more comfortable introducing movement and watching movement and recognizing faults, then the next inherent progression is getting more comfortable coaching and correcting movement. And then if I can tell somebody a simple cue like hips before hands to get rid of an early arm bend in a deadlift or a clean or a snatch, and that gets them better movement that lifts more load, my job is done. And if it's as simple as a 1 second cue that fixes that movement, and every time I come back around, I just need to cue that individual again and it continues to work, my job is done. How simple is that? I got better movement that can be loaded heavier. That is the goal of any strength and conditioning programming. So just developing that coach first mentality, understanding that most faults with most people can be corrected with cueing. We can use our words, we can use visual demonstration of what we want the person to show us, and we can also use things like tactile cues, right? We can stand in front of somebody that's jumping forward in a push press and say, don't run into me. That's a great tactile cue. We can hold a PVC pipe behind somebody so they feel their upper back in the dip of a push press or a push jerk to show better movement. That, again, the ultimate goal to be loaded a little bit heavier, get that progressive overload, create stronger human beings that leave the gym and leave our clinic. So watching that movement is really important to understand how effective coaching can be, and that we don't always need to perform an assessment. We don't always need to introduce manual therapy to try to improve movement. Sometimes it's as simple as a 1 second cue. And my favorite saying from my time in the Army is, when it's easy, let it be easy. Just move on and be happy that it was that easy, and take the win and the slam dunk and move on to the next person, move on to the next patient. The other point there, my third point here, is getting comfortable with scaling, understanding that people that come to the gym come with a wide variety of movement experience and background, a wide variety of injury history, a wide variety of mobility and strength, and natural strengths and weaknesses and things they like to avoid. And it's no different when they come into the clinic. So my third point here, getting comfortable with scaling, you do it at a higher volume in the gym. The common misconception about group fitness of something like CrossFit or boot camp or Orange Theory is that everybody that walks in is going to be doing exactly what's written on the board at the exact intensity and weights. And that's simply not true. That in any given class of 10 to 15 athletes, maybe 3 to 5 of them are going to be doing the workout written on the board. There are some workouts, obviously rowing intervals or bike intervals. That's something everybody can do. But most of the time, there's going to be at least one movement on the board that somebody is going to be scaling the load, scaling the reps, scaling the entire movement, reducing the range of motion, maybe doing an entirely different workout based on what's going on. So getting more comfortable with scaling comes from working with group fitness and working with a bunch of different people who come on and all basically need the workout modified to meet them where they're at, so that the end result, we get what we call the intended stimulus. That if we do it right, if my coaching is done correctly, 15 people will have the relatively same experience of a high intensity metabolic conditioning workout or a heavy weightlifting session or a high skill gymnastics practice session, and they will feel the same. Their lats will be sore if it's strict pull-ups, if they did negatives, if they did toenail pull-ups, if they did jumping pull-ups, if we did biking and thrusters, they will be laying on the ground at the end of the workout, regardless of what movements we had to modify for them, the weight, the reps, that sort of thing. That comfort with scaling makes patient care a breeze, because now instead of taking a group of 15 people and saying, okay, this person just needs to go, they need to scale the weight on the dumbbell thrusters. Okay, that person can't lift overhead with the right arm, they're doing single arm thrusters. Okay, that person has tight ankles, I need to put plates under their heels so they can hit depth on those dumbbell thrusters, and then that will determine how heavy they can go based on their mechanics. Okay, that person can't bike, their knee is bugging them, so we're going to row instead, or we're going to do line jumps. And you get the idea of, I'm scanning the room and calculating who needs to modify the workout. And the truth is, it's that for most people in most classes, they're modifying some part of the workout. And now when I go into the clinic, I just have one person. It's a breeze. It's a breeze by comparison. I know exactly what's wrong with them medically. They're coming in with a diagnosis. I've evaluated them. I know what's going on with them. Maybe we've already modified it, and now we're just trying to progress it. It is such a breeze to get more comfortable with scaling when you do it in group fitness than when you do it in the clinic. And you're less scared when that person comes in that has an injury that might prevent them from moving. Maybe an injury that you're not comfortable, or maybe you've ever worked with. Maybe somebody comes in and they're in a wheelchair. It's always I guess, a combination of funny and sad to me about how uncomfortable physical therapists are of working with adaptive athletes. We're physical therapists. Like, somebody that needs to move and they are in a wheelchair should be like a slam dunk for us. And yet it's very interesting to see when folks come in who want to do CrossFit and they are in a wheelchair, of how scared we get, and we think, ooh, just I don't know, just I'm not the one for you. I'm not a sports physical therapist. Go see somebody else. Goodbye. But getting comfortable scaling movement, knowing like, okay, that adaptive athlete can do ski erg in their wheelchair. We have lat mats so they can do dumbbell and barbell work with their upper body in their wheelchair. They can do pulling work, vertical and horizontal pulling work in their wheelchair. And all that comfort with scaling comes from doing it every day in the gym for a couple of hours, working with dozens or maybe even hundreds of athletes through the course of a week, depending on how much you coach. So getting really comfortable with scaling, and also understanding the priority of scaling. When in doubt, we want to preserve the full range of motion to train the muscles, ligaments, and joints through a full range of motion. When in doubt, we want to train the repetition count that we have in our mind. And really what we're thinking of when I think of what am I scaling, what is my order, that comes from knowing the priorities of scaling as taught by CrossFit. That first thing I'm going to scale is the load so that folks can maintain the repetition, the range of motion, the implement. Then I'm going to scale the reps. Then I'm going to scale the implement. And the very last thing I'm going to do is scale the range of motion, because training partial range of motion only makes us strong and fast in that range of motion. So getting comfortable with scaling makes it a breeze to then modify workouts for folks who come into the clinic who it doesn't really matter what's wrong with them injury-wise. We're very comfortable doing that. And again, the end result there is that everybody achieves the same stimulus. What we start to realize then is patients who come into the clinic and we can't get them moving, they're really limited by our creativity, which sucks. So coaching can help really expand your movement library, your scaling library, and make patient care that much easier. My final point here is really coaching group fitness helps you understand that, yes, that CrossFit coach, that Orange Theory coach may just have a high school diploma. They don't have doctor in front of their name, but that doesn't mean they don't know what they're doing. In that specific field, they are the expert, right? You would never have a plumber come out who fixes your toilet in an hour and does it at night in emergency when it's leaking. You would never say, this person, because they're not a doctor of plumbing. You would say, thank God for that plumber who out here at 10 p.m. and fix my toilet. I'm going to pay that person whatever they charge me. And yet when we interact with strength and conditioning coaches and personal trainers, we really kind of look down on them as a lesser version of physical therapist, which that's not what they're trying to be. Most coaches are not trying to be a fake physical therapist. They're trying to get people moving. So getting in the gym and connecting with these coaches makes them that much more approachable to you, and vice versa. Of these are professionals, coaches that have been doing this for many, many years, for 5 years, for 10 years, are so much more comfortable introducing movement. They don't get scared when somebody comes in with a joint replacement, or somebody comes in with a wheelchair or a below the knee amputation. They are so comfortable introducing movement and modifying movement for anybody. It's watching a master of their craft work. And that really gives us a lot of confidence that these are people in the community that we can trust and that we want to work with, that these are the folks we're thinking of when we are getting ready to formally end physical therapy with a patient. We want to keep that person moving. We want to have these coaches in our toolbox of people that we can refer to. If we know those coaches know what they're doing, and how you know those people know what they're doing is you go exercise with them in class, or you coach alongside them on the coaching staff, or both, and you get very comfortable trusting them to send them your patients, that they're going to keep that person moving and they're going to do a very good job at it. And the sad thing here is that we need to realize, and I know this is kind of a bummer on the Friday before Christmas. I know we're all supposed to be fake happy here and be really joyous this time of year, but we really need to have the hard conversation and the recognition that we're losing the war on chronic disease, that in the past 10 to 20 years, we have given up ground on this. We have not made ground. That I reflect back on starting undergrad back in 2011 and hearing that half of people were overweight or obese, half of people had one chronic disease, half of people were not meeting exercise guidelines. And now fast forward a decade, we're in an even worse position. Only 11% of people meet the minimums for exercise. Over 80% of people are overweight or obese or morbidly obese, or now the other two categories, super and ultra morbidly obese, and that we're really losing ground here. And how we gain that ground back is not by seeing patients in our clinic one-on-one for an hour for $150. Yes, that has value, especially when they truly need our help from a physical therapy perspective, but we will not move the needle forward as a population on chronic disease by seeing people one-on-one for an hour for personal style PT training in our clinic, especially 2 to 3 times a week. That's very costly to the patient. That's very time ineffective. And you're simply not going to reach everybody you need to reach to really move the needle on chronic disease. That if we really step back and think, there are now over 330 Americans, there are about 100,000 full-time licensed practicing physical therapists. That means we're outnumbered 3,320 to 1. That means you would need to see 8 people a day, one-on-one for an hour for 415 days out of the year. And that would just be seeing them once to get in front of a physical therapist to see you for something like performance physical therapy. And now, Alan, you're probably saying, hey, there's only 365 days in a year, man. What are you talking about? Exactly, right? It is that much time and money inefficient to come see a physical therapist to start the journey to movement. Really, we need to be thinking of, we need to get these people in the gym. That even if we think about, we see 12 patients a day, we see a patient every 45 minutes, it would take 276 days, which is more than the amount of days of weekdays there are in a year, to be able to see every person in the country once, right? So we begin to understand that we are very outnumbered. We are losing ground on this. And the way we move forward is getting people, if they're up for it, not everybody else is up for it, but that's fine. But in general, we need to be getting people moving is the first priority. And the most effective way for everybody, for the healthcare system, for the patient, in a time and money perspective, is to get them in group fitness if they think they would be interested in group fitness. Otherwise, we're trying to put our thumb in the dam while it's still pouring rain, and we're doing absolutely nothing to change the fact that as long as it continues to rain, it doesn't matter how much we plug the hole in the dam, it's still going to overflow. And that's going to have ramifications downstream for our healthcare system and our economy and country as a whole. That as we continue to be outnumbered, as we continue to lose ground in chronic disease, we need to look for allies and unite in this field. And those are our group fitness coaches who, instead of one-on-one for an hour, can take 10 or 15 people and get them all moving. And understanding where those people are at in our community and how to connect our patients with them is very, very, very important. So getting people moving is our ultimate goal. So I hope this is helpful. We've talked a lot on here on pros and cons of coaching group fitness. It's not the most financially lucrative thing. You're definitely not going to have a nice yacht coaching group fitness, but it definitely can be lucrative to get patients into your clinic and have a good relationship with the gym so that if folks do get injured, they look to you first. Being in front of a large group of people on an almost daily basis has worked very well for us here. I can tell you that on an anecdotal basis, but it's definitely something that can help refine and sharpen your own clinical practice. Sharpen that coach's eye by just watching more repetitions of movement, getting more comfortable scaling movement, getting comfortable with a coaching first mentality, trying to use our cueing, trying to use our words, our tactile cues, our visual cues to get the movement we want instead of choosing assessments and testing and manual therapy. And then finally connecting with folks in the community who are on the same mission as us, of using lifestyle behavior change as our primary intervention, of getting people moving in a safe manner, moving on a regular basis to try to regain some ground that we've lost in our war here on chronic disease. So hope this was helpful. Hope you have a fantastic Friday, a wonderful weekend, a very Merry Christmas. I'll be back here next Thursday. Have a fantastic day. Bye, everybody.